I cannot be an ally of marginalized people, being marginalized myself, and not support everybody. That means supporting the LGBTQ plus community. Mind you, I am not part of that community, but that does not mean that I cannot be an ally of that community. No, this is the country that you've been turning a blind eye to. It's been there the whole time. You didn't want to acknowledge it. Think for yourself. Don't assimilate. Don't conform. Be authentically yourself. Let me take you back to the 60s. I told y'all I was going to go all over the place, but don't worry. I'm going to bring it all around and make my point. Let me take you back to the 60s. The 60s were a monumental time for civil rights. Now, people think the civil rights movement is solely about Black people. And Martin Luther King and the student and SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Organization, all these organizations were absolutely Black, and they were absolutely fighting for the rights of Black people. What's in that civil rights bill that Lyndon Baines Johnson passed is that no jobs, nobody could discriminate on race, gender, and sex. That's what often is forgotten in the civil rights movement, is that the civil rights movement, though led by Black people, wasn't solely for Black people. It was for women. And whether or not you believe it, it wasn't the intention, I don't believe, of Martin Luther King and the nonviolent organization, but it was also for the LGBTQ plus community. This is what I mean by that. So when you say that you cannot be excluded from a job, place of employment, things of that for race, gender, and sex, that meant that women were now allowed to start applying for jobs that had been traditionally held by men. However, after the Civil Rights Amendment was passed, women still found that they were being persecuted against and being told that they could not have men jobs. They could be stewardess, and that's what they called them at that time, not flight attendants, stewardess. I'm speaking specifically for that time period. Stewardess, teachers, nurses, maids, things like that. They couldn't work in the auto factories in Detroit, in Ohio, because the people that were hiring were saying that they were men jobs. So the women's liberation movement sought to make sure that the Civil Rights Act was properly enforced because it had not been enforced for them. You also see a rise of LGBTQ plus activism. Now, I tell you, I said it all the time, I cannot be an ally of marginalized people, being marginalized myself, and not support everybody. That means supporting the LGBTQ plus community. Mind you, I am not part of that community, but that does not mean that I cannot be an ally of that community. There are white people who are allies of Black rights and Black movement. The Jewish population had a huge involvement in the civil rights movement because they had seen what can happen, what did happen in Germany. They had seen persecution and segregation. They seen it. And they came here and they were like, hey, I've seen this before, right? So I, as a marginalized people, have to be an ally for everybody who's marginalized. That means indigenous folks, that means migrants, that means the LGBTQ plus community, excuse me. What was their movement? Do you realize that during the 60s, in the South, you could be arrested for being gay? It was literally in the psychological books that it was a psychological issue, that it was the same as being bipolar. These were things that they were fighting for. Now, why am I bringing all of this up? Let's go back to the fact that I think in patterns. If you look at the fights for rights during the 60s, fast forward, not more than 60 years later, we're fighting for the same things all over again. Not quite laws that are segregating, but this administration is trying to. History repeats itself. That's the reason why people don't want to be taught history. It's the reason why that I'm always on here talking about this is what's going to happen. I knew with the election of Barack Obama that there was going to be pushback. How do I know this? Because during the civil rights movement, as we are moving the country forward to accepting everybody, that was the beginning of the conservative movement. It was the absolute beginning of the conservative movement. Okay. And it was a beginning of Republicans moving to the extreme right. That's kind of what happens. When you make progress for a certain group of people, other people feel threatened. They say, well, this is not my way of life. This is not the country I know. No, this is the country that you've been turning a blind eye to. It's been there the whole time. You didn't want to acknowledge it. And guess what? You don't have to look at it. You don't have to acknowledge it if you don't want to, but you do have to respect it because marginalized people have the right to exist just like you do. So I knew with the election of Barack Obama, there was going to be a huge tidal wave in other direction. I didn't know it was going to be this bad. I mean, I knew it was going to be bad, but not this bad. It's almost like people have lost their common sense. But honestly, go back and watch the videos of the 60s. Go back and watch the vitriol and the hatred that people had for other people just trying to exist, just to have the same freedoms as them, just to be able to live where they wanted to live, shop where they wanted to shop, go to the bathroom where they wanted to go to the bathroom, drink wherever they wanted to drink, just to exist. We see the same things happen here. My mind works in patterns. Okay. So, yes, as you have a rise of progression, you're going to have a rise of opposition. The people in power are going to always rise against progression, as evident of everything that you see in the 60s. But I say all that to say this once again, I think in patterns. Don't be alarmed. I see a lot of people out there saying this is the end of times. It's not. We've seen times that are even worse than this. Just let's go back to the 60s. The 60s was an incredible freaking decade. I mean, an assassination of important figures, movements all over the place, counter movements. We're in a war that's raging out of control, right? The 60s were crazy. The people that grew up in the 60s were growing up at a difficult time. The people that grew up in the 70s growing up at a difficult time, the 80s, the 90s. Like, no matter what decade you in, each generation has their own plight that they're going through. I say all of this to say, once again, I look at things in patterns. And I don't want people to be disillusioned because as hate rises, it comes to a breaking point, and then there's love. And then the love will come and they'll get to a breaking point, and then there's hate and love and hate and love. It's the balance. It's like the Force in Star Wars, right? It's the balance between the light and dark. There's got to be balance. Whenever there's imbalance, it's got to even itself out. We're never going to get to the point where we're all lovey-dovey and there's no hate. Sorry. Where there is differences, there are always going to be hate. That's human nature. Hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that's just the way it's going to be. And there's always going to balance itself out when there is a balance. When there is so much progression that is being made, the things have to balance itself out. There'll be a counter to that progression to try and even things out to balance out. Where the balance ends, I don't know. I don't know where the happy medium is because there is no pattern that I see where there's a happy medium. I mean, even in Germany right now, you see a rise of the right. I mean, it took 60 years, 80 years, but you're seeing a segment of the population being extreme right, where they had suppressed it for so long. That's just how these things kind of work. I think that you must be strong in your convictions. You must be strong in your ideals. You must research, do true research. TikTok, Instagram, all these things are not going to give you the answers. History. will give you the answers to what's going on now. And then read credible sources to find out what's going on, and then have a formulated opinion. Even if you're getting information from a trusted source, still research your own. Come up with your own opinion. Don't take the opinions of others to formulate your own opinion. You could take a grouping of opinions to formulate your opinion, but don't take the opinions of others and then adopt that, and then that's your opinion. Think for yourself. Don't assimilate. Don't conform. Be authentically yourself. And so that's the whole purpose of this first segment. It is literally the purpose of this entire podcast. I interview people. I talk to people. I have conversations with my sister because I am personally continuously going through an evolution to find my authentic self. And you should be doing the same thing. Authentically, I'm a person who thinks in patterns. And I've seen this all before. I know most of the time how things are going to play out because I've seen it before. And I can tell you, there's always going to be some good, there's going to be some bad. You got to keep your head above water, not get too high, not get too low. Realize that there's always work to be done and never give up. And that work just isn't on people outside. It's also within. Be a thinker. Sit in thought. Laugh. Cry. Every day. Live every day. That's what it's all about.
Join the conversation and follow the Unsolicited Perspectives podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your audio podcasts.